Pope Francis has died. That's come from the Vatican.
Whispers have now turned into something louder in Vatican City. Among the centuries-old marble corridors and ornate chapels, the name of one man continues to gain traction: Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Once a parish priest in the Philippines, Tagle's journey to the upper echelons of the Roman Catholic Church has drawn attention not only for its speed, but also for the unique qualities he brings with him. His rise is not just remarkable for being a personal achievement, but also because it represents a shift in the geographic and cultural makeup of Catholic leadership. Luis Antonio Tagle was born in Manila in 1957 and ordained as a priest in 1982. His pastoral work began in the Diocese of Imus, a relatively quiet region outside the capital. While his early years were spent doing the kind of humble, hands-on work expected of any priest, it soon became clear that his gifts went beyond preaching and pastoral care. He had a deep intellect, paired with a calm, approachable personality and a clear sense of purpose. Over time, this combination brought him to the attention of church leaders both in the Philippines and abroad. By 1997, Tagle's name had already reached the Vatican, when Pope John Paul II appointed him to the International Theological Commission. This body advises the Pope on doctrinal matters, and at the time it was overseen by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who would later become Pope Benedict XVI. It was here that Tagle's theological depth and diplomatic skills came to the forefront. He was known not for speaking the loudest in debates, but for listening carefully and responding thoughtfully. He made an impression not just as a scholar, but as someone who could hold difficult conversations without losing sight of compassion. Fast forward to 2011, Tagle was appointed Archbishop of Manila, succeeding Cardinal Gaudencio Rosales. This was a major role in a country where Catholicism is deeply rooted in society and culture. As Archbishop, Tagle was known for his down-to-earth approach. He didn't own a car, avoided luxurious perks, and regularly met with street vendors, farmers, and the urban poor. His pastoral style emphasized closeness to ordinary people, something that stood out in contrast to the more formal, distant image sometimes associated with church hierarchy. Then came a key turning point. In November 2012, Tagle was named a cardinal by Pope Benedict XVI. At the time, he was only 55 years old, making him one of the youngest members of the College of Cardinals. This alone drew attention. But it was not just his age. It was the emotion he displayed during the ceremony. As he received the red biretta, the traditional hat of a cardinal, he was seen wiping away tears. It was an unusual sight for such a formal occasion and one that touched many around the world. It reflected what people had come to expect from Tagle: sincerity and vulnerability. His responsibilities only grew from there. In December 2019, Pope Francis made a decision that would significantly increase Tagle's influence. He appointed him prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, one of the most powerful departments in the Vatican. This office, historically known as Propaganda Fidei, oversees the Church's missionary work in developing regions, including Asia, Africa, and Oceania. The post comes with substantial authority, especially when it comes to appointing bishops and shaping the future of Catholic communities in the global South. This appointment was significant for many reasons. Firstly, it marked a break from centuries of tradition where this kind of power was usually held by European cardinals. Tagle became only the second Asian to head the department, and his presence in that role signaled a shift in the Church's focus. Demographically, the global Catholic population is changing. While Europe has seen a decline in church attendance and vocations, Catholic communities in Asia and Africa are growing rapidly. Tagle represents this change, not just in numbers, but in cultural perspective. Secondly, Tagle's leadership style brought something fresh to the Vatican. Known for being media-savvy and personable, he didn't shy away from public engagement. He often used digital platforms to reach younger Catholics and wasn't afraid to appear in casual, unscripted settings. His appearances on the program The Word Exposed, which offers accessible reflections on the Bible, have reached millions. His tone is often informal but respectful, blending humor, emotion, and clear teaching in a way that resonates with a wide audience. Beyond media, Tagle's impact inside the Vatican was also felt in another crucial area: financial transparency. He became a member of the administration of the Patrimony of the Apostolic See, APSA, a body that manages the Church's real estate holdings and investments. This was a major responsibility, especially in light of ongoing financial reform efforts under Pope Francis. For years, the Vatican had been criticized for its opaque financial systems and lack of oversight. Tagle became a key figure in pushing for clearer reporting and greater accountability. He publicly declared that the faithful deserved to know how their donations were being used. It wasn't just a statement. It marked a real effort to align financial management with the values the Church preaches. Under his watch, policies were introduced that made financial records more accessible and required departments to follow stricter rules. His reputation as a reformer grew not because he made radical changes, but because he insisted on small, meaningful steps toward integrity and responsibility. At the same time, his presence at the Vatican contributed to a broader sense of cultural openness. His fluency in several languages, Tagalog, English, Italian, and more, allowed him to communicate effectively in a variety of settings. Whether in high-level theological discussions or informal gatherings, he was known for being able to connect across divides. His multicultural background also helped. Being of both Filipino and Chinese descent, he understood the complexities of identity and belonging, something that has become increasingly important in a globalized church. Tagle's influence extends to theological circles as well. His background in academic theology, combined with his pastoral sensibility, made him a bridge between the Church's intellectual elite and everyday believers. He has argued that the Church must listen more and speak less, especially in matters where doctrine intersects with people's real struggles. He believes that evangelization today isn't about telling people what to believe, but about walking with them and offering hope. Despite his growing prominence, Tagle has not shown signs of seeking power for its own sake. Those who have worked with him describe him as approachable, deeply spiritual, and unafraid of difficult conversations. He's just as likely to spend time with Vatican gardeners as he is to be in meetings with cardinals. His door remains open, and he continues to insist that the role of church leaders is to serve, not to rule. Tagle led Caritas Internationalis from 2015 to 2022, a federation that brings together over 160 Catholic relief, development, and social service organizations operating in nearly every country in the world. Under his leadership, Caritas transformed from a traditional Catholic charity into a more modern, professional, and inclusive humanitarian organization. While still grounded in its Catholic identity, the organization expanded its reach and sharpened its response to major global crises, such as natural disasters, conflict zones, and the ongoing refugee situation. Throughout these years, Tagle traveled extensively. Whether it was Haiti after a devastating earthquake, war-torn Syria, or areas affected by flooding in Southeast Asia, he was regularly seen not just attending high-level briefings but meeting the people directly affected. He spoke with refugees, embraced crying children, and visited relief shelters. His hands-on leadership earned him the respect of both volunteers and leaders across political and religious divides. What stood out to many was his ability to remain humble and grounded, even when operating at the highest levels of international diplomacy. When he gave speeches, he often shifted the spotlight away from himself and onto the people working on the front lines: nurses, cooks, field coordinators, and volunteers. He would often say that real humanitarian work begins not in the boardrooms but in broken places, where people are grieving, rebuilding, and hoping. In early 2024, his humanitarian efforts were officially recognized by the French government, which awarded him the Legion of Honor, one of the highest distinctions France bestows on civilians. While the ceremony itself was formal, held at the historic Villa Bonaparte in Rome, Tagle kept his speech focused on gratitude rather than achievement. He made a point of acknowledging the invisible hands behind the work, those in the field who bring food, shelter, and hope to people who have nothing left. He referred to them as the real recipients of the award, reminding the world that behind every medal, there are untold stories of service. His presence at global Catholic events has also grown over the years. In July 2024, he was appointed papal envoy to the 10th National Eucharistic Congress in the United States. The gathering, held at the Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, drew over 50,000 Catholics from across the country. In a venue usually filled with American football fans, the sound of cheers and hymns filled the air as Cardinal Tagle walked to the center stage. His homily focused on the Eucharist as both a sacred mystery and a social responsibility. He encouraged Catholics to not only receive the Eucharist with reverence, but to let that experience transform how they treat others, especially the poor, the forgotten, and the marginalized. What made that moment memorable was not just the scale of the event or the significance of his words, but the way people responded. Even non-Catholics in attendance said they felt moved by the sincerity and depth of his message. There were no theatrics, no grand gestures, just a quiet authority and genuine warmth that filled the stadium. Cardinal Tagle's ability to engage with people across cultures and belief systems comes in part from his own diverse background. Being Filipino and of Chinese descent, he grew up at the intersection of multiple traditions. That upbringing, combined with his fluency in several languages, has made him an effective communicator in international settings. Whether speaking English, Italian, or Tagalog, his messages feel personal and sincere. His communication style is thoughtful and never condescending, which has helped him build bridges between groups that may not always see eye to eye. In fact, one of the hallmarks of his leadership has been his emphasis on listening. During his years with Caritas, he consistently invited feedback from local communities. He pushed for initiatives to be developed with the people, not just for them. This collaborative approach helped tailor humanitarian responses to the actual needs on the ground and avoided the pitfalls of top-down decision-making that can sometimes plague large organizations. Beyond humanitarian work, Tagle has also been an active voice in interfaith and intercultural dialogue. He regularly participates in conversations with leaders from different religions, advocating for shared responsibility in solving global issues like poverty, climate change, and migration. His approach is never combative. Instead, he seeks common ground. Muslim leaders have praised his respectful attitude toward Islam, while Jewish leaders have recognized his commitment to promoting mutual understanding between their faiths and Catholicism. Back within the Vatican, his influence was tested during a major transition at Caritas Internationalis in late 2022. Concerns had been raised about management issues within the organization, leading the Vatican to call for a full reorganization. Tagle was not directly responsible for the day-to-day administration at the time, but as president, he was involved in overseeing the shift. Rather than resist the changes or distance himself, he took an active role in ensuring that reforms were carried out respectfully and efficiently. The transition was a challenge, but it underscored Tagle's ongoing commitment to accountability and institutional renewal. Even when faced with criticism, he remains composed. His reaction is rarely defensive. Instead, he listens, reflects, and then responds with clarity. It's this kind of leadership that has helped him navigate both the spiritual and administrative responsibilities of his roles. Over time, Tagle has come to symbolize a new kind of church leadership, one that is global, engaged, and compassionate. His actions show that it is possible to hold tradition and progress in the same hand. He doesn't seek attention, but when attention finds him, he uses it to highlight causes greater than himself. In the streets of Manila, stories of Cardinal Tagle are often passed around with both pride and wonder. One of the most well-known is about him riding public transportation, even as a bishop. He would often take jeepneys or buses, not because there was no other option, but because he preferred to be among the people. There are accounts of him quietly sitting next to street vendors and market-goers, initiating friendly conversations and listening to their stories. To many, these moments were surprising, not because a religious figure was kind, but because someone with such a high position chose humility over status. One story, often shared among Filipino Catholics, recalls a street vendor named Maria, who once saw him board a crowded jeepney. At first, she didn't recognize him. He wore no clerical collar, just simple clothes and a gentle smile. When he asked about her family and wished her well, she was stunned to realize it was Cardinal Tagle. That brief exchange left a lasting impression. She later said, "He didn't talk down to me. He talked like a friend. That's when I knew he was different." These everyday gestures are not rare for Tagle. As a bishop, and even now as a high-ranking cardinal, he continues to break the mold of what church leadership often looks like. He is approachable, both in person and through the digital world. His Facebook Live sessions have drawn large audiences. On YouTube, his channel, The Word Exposed, simplifies and explains the Sunday Gospel in a way that feels personal and conversational. It's not uncommon to hear people say it feels like he's talking directly to them. Yet Tagle's public image isn't a strategy. It's consistent with his genuine personality. Those who know him say his private and public demeanor are exactly the same: open-hearted, reflective, and deeply pastoral. He doesn't shy away from difficult conversations either. On many of the Church's most controversial issues, Tagle has stood firm on Catholic teaching, but has also introduced a tone of compassion that has been lacking in the past. Take, for example, his approach to topics like abortion, contraception, and divorce. Tagle affirms the Church's moral positions, but he often speaks about these matters in a way that shifts the focus from judgment to understanding. He has said publicly that harsh language has built walls instead of bridges, and that the Church needs to find better ways of accompanying people in their struggles. During one widely shared address, he said, "Before we speak of sin, we must speak of human dignity. Before we point fingers, we must extend hands." That message resonates with many Catholics who feel distanced from the Church, especially those who are divorced, LGBTQ+, or who have experienced exclusion for any number of reasons. Tagle doesn't call for doctrinal change, but he clearly believes the Church's language and tone matter deeply. In an increasingly polarized world, his emphasis on empathy and listening has helped him earn respect across ideological divides. Environmental issues are also a top priority for Tagle. In line with Pope Francis's landmark encyclical Laudato Si', he has become an advocate for sustainable living and ecological responsibility. In his native Philippines, one of the countries most affected by climate change, he has launched local campaigns encouraging parishes to plant trees, eliminate plastic use, and support renewable energy. During typhoon seasons, he is often seen visiting affected communities, not just offering prayers, but actively participating in cleanup efforts and community rebuilding. Tagle believes the Church must not only speak about creation care, but model it through action. In one of his homilies, he reminded his audience that caring for the environment isn't a political stance. It's a moral obligation rooted in Christian teachings. How can we say we love the Creator if we continue to destroy creation? He asked. Another part of Tagle's unique appeal lies in how he communicates. He's media savvy, yes, but more importantly, he's emotionally intelligent. His tone is consistently calm, and his storytelling style makes complex theological ideas more relatable. Rather than quoting long sections of doctrine, he often begins his reflections with a personal story or a question that invites people to reflect. This method, simple yet effective, draws people in. And his accessibility goes beyond just videos and sermons. Tagle is known for personally responding to letters and social media messages, sometimes well into the night. There are many documented cases of people receiving direct replies from him, notes of encouragement, prayers, or answers to faith-related questions. One woman who had lost her husband wrote to him on Facebook, not really expecting a reply. When Tagle wrote back a day later with a prayer and a message of comfort, she said it felt like a light in the darkest period of her life. He is equally involved on the ground. During Manila's urban poverty crisis in the early 2010s, Tagle turned unused church properties into temporary shelters. He launched soup kitchens that provided not just food but dignity, offering full meals with proper tables and cutlery, avoiding the typical charity line model. His belief was simple: the poor deserve not only help but respect. Despite his growing global profile, Tagle seems relatively untouched by status or protocol. Within Vatican City, where formality and tradition are deeply embedded, he still greets gardeners and janitors by name. He has a habit of remembering small details about people's families or past conversations. It's this consistent personal attention that makes people, whether fellow cardinals or ordinary parishioners, feel seen. His leadership style has raised eyebrows among more conservative voices in the Church, particularly those who feel that the traditional ways of doing things are being diluted. But Tagle doesn't seem fazed by criticism. He has said repeatedly that the Church must change with the times, not in its core truths, but in how it communicates and acts on those truths. If we keep saying the same things the same way while the world changes around us, we risk becoming irrelevant, he once remarked in a press conference. What sets Tagle apart is his ability to balance this modern pastoral sensitivity with a solid grounding in Catholic tradition. He doesn't challenge the Church's teachings directly, but he asks important questions about how those teachings are applied in real-life situations. He encourages the Church to be more present in people's lives, not as a distant authority, but as a trusted companion. His approach has drawn comparisons to Pope Francis himself, with some even calling him the Asian Francis. The similarities are clear. Both leaders focus on mercy, social justice, and outreach to the peripheries. And like Francis, Tagle has become a symbol of a more welcoming, more inclusive church. It was 1982 when a newly ordained Father Tagle first stepped into San Agustin Parish in the town of Mendez Núñez. Fresh out of seminary, he didn't come with grand titles or ambitions. He arrived with a worn-out Bible, a gentle smile, and a strong desire to serve. His earliest years in ministry were filled with the kind of daily interactions that rarely make headlines: celebrating Mass, listening to confessions, baptizing babies, blessing homes, and simply walking among the people. But those who met him early on already noticed something different. He had a quiet authority about him, not the kind that commands through fear, but the kind that invites through presence. Within just a year of becoming a parish priest, Tagle was given a second role, spiritual director at the Diocesan Seminary of Imus. And by 1983, at the age of only 26, he became rector of the seminary, an appointment that surprised many for its speed and weight of responsibility. He was now helping shape the next generation of priests while still deep in his own formation as a young clergyman. But he took the role with humility, continuing to teach, guide, and support his seminarians while remaining closely connected to parish life. What also became clear in those years was Tagle's intellectual brilliance. He wasn't just a good preacher or a compassionate listener. He had a mind built for deep theological exploration. His superiors saw this and, in 1985, sent him to the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., to pursue graduate studies in theology. There, he completed a licentiate and eventually a doctorate, graduating summa cum laude in 1991. His doctoral dissertation focused on Episcopal collegiality and the writings and teachings of Pope Paul VI, an academic subject that reflects his lifelong commitment to a collaborative, listening church. While in the U.S., he studied under some of the leading theological minds of the time. His professors, including renowned theologian Joseph Komenchak, later spoke of Tagle's rare ability to combine theological depth with pastoral sensibility. He wasn't just interested in abstract concepts. He wanted to know how theology could be lived, felt, and applied in real communities. That unique blend of scholarship and compassion would come to define much of his later leadership. Upon returning to the Philippines in the early 1990s, Tagle resumed his post at the seminary, becoming rector once again. He also began teaching theology at various schools, including the Loyola School of Theology and San Carlos Seminary. But he wasn't content to stay in academic circles alone. He remained active in his diocese, spending time with the poor, the sick, and the elderly, and keeping his homilies simple enough for everyone to understand. By 1997, his talents had caught the attention of Rome. That year, Pope John Paul II appointed him as a member of the International Theological Commission, an advisory body to the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. At the time, this commission was headed by none other than Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the future Pope Benedict XVI. Working under Ratzinger, Tagle helped shape responses to some of the Church's most pressing doctrinal questions. Despite the intellectual rigor of the commission, Tagle remained approachable and collaborative, traits that distinguished him even in such elite circles. But perhaps the moment when his pastoral leadership began reaching a broader audience came in 2001. That year, Pope John Paul II appointed him Bishop of Imus, the same diocese where he had begun his priestly ministry. As bishop, Tagle made it clear that his style of leadership would be anything but conventional. He didn't own a car. He refused lavish gifts. He preferred to walk or use public transport. And his doors were always open, not just to church officials but to ordinary people. Local stories abound of him personally answering phone calls, sweeping the cathedral steps himself and refusing special treatment at public events. In 2009, the Philippines was hit by a series of devastating typhoons and floods. In Cavite, Tagle opened church buildings as emergency shelters and personally helped organize rescue and relief efforts. He worked side by side with volunteers, even wading through knee-deep water to deliver aid. For many, this was the first time they saw a bishop so directly involved in the hard, physical work of disaster response. It left a lasting impression not just on Catholics but on people of all faiths. Then in 2011, his life changed dramatically again. Pope Benedict XVI appointed him Archbishop of Manila, one of the most important church positions in Asia. At the time, Manila was facing serious challenges: poverty, political instability, and questions about the church's relevance in modern society. Tagle's approach was simple but effective. He opened up dialogue with critics, engaged youth through social media, and made it clear that the church should not isolate itself from real-world issues. Only a year later, in 2012, Tagle was named a cardinal by Pope Benedict XVI. At just 55 years old, he was one of the youngest cardinals in the world, and the second youngest in the College of Cardinals at that time. But what truly caught public attention during the ceremony was not his age, it was his tears. As he received the red biretta, the traditional cardinal's hat, he wept openly. In a setting known for solemnity and formality, this show of emotion surprised and moved many. It wasn't just a sentimental moment, it was a clear sign that this cardinal would lead with heart. From there, Tagle's influence only grew. In 2015, he became president of Caritas Internationalis, one of the largest Catholic humanitarian organizations in the world. In 2019, Pope Francis appointed him as prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples, a position that oversees the Church's missionary work in regions like Asia and Africa. And in 2020, he was promoted to Cardinal Bishop, the highest rank within the College of Cardinals, making him the first Asian to hold that title. Despite this meteoric rise, Tagle has remained grounded. His leadership style hasn't changed. He still listens more than he speaks. He still prefers direct contact with people over scripted formalities. His offices, whether in Manila or the Vatican, have always maintained an open-door policy. He continues to advocate for the poor, promote interfaith dialogue, and challenge the Church to be more inclusive and transparent. In the words of one Vatican official, "In Cardinal Tagle we see something rare: power without pride, authority without distance." His story proves that true leadership doesn't come from seeking power. It comes from service, consistency, and compassion. From a small-town parish to the highest levels of church governance, Cardinal Tagle's journey is not just about titles or roles. It's about a way of being, a way of leading that speaks to both tradition and the urgent needs of today's world. One of Tagle's most powerful qualities is his ability to make spirituality accessible. He does this not by simplifying doctrine, but by explaining it with care, clarity, and compassion. Whether he's standing at a podium before thousands or speaking through a television camera, his words are often delivered in a way that sounds more like a friend offering encouragement than a preacher delivering a sermon. He doesn't rely on complex or technical language to communicate theology. Instead, he finds the human connection behind each teaching and brings it to life with stories, examples, and emotional honesty. An example of this can be seen in his popular television program, The Word Exposed. The weekly show features Cardinal Tagle reflecting on the Sunday Gospel readings and offering his insights in both English and Tagalog. The tone of the show is calm, reflective, and sincere. While many Catholic television programs lean heavily on doctrine or formal presentation, The Word Exposed feels more like a warm invitation to think, to feel, and to grow. Through this platform, he has reached audiences not only in the Philippines but across the global Filipino diaspora and beyond. People often describe feeling like Tagle is speaking directly to them, even when watching through a screen. That personal connection is rare, and it has made him a spiritual voice for those who might otherwise feel distant from the Church. Especially for younger generations who are often skeptical of religious institutions, Tagle's openness and authenticity provide a reason to stay connected. He never shouts, never scolds, and never appears self-important. He simply shares the gospel in a way that feels close to daily life. Beyond television, Tagle has also made effective use of social media. His live Q&A sessions, short reflections, and pastoral messages on Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms consistently draw large audiences. But what sets him apart is that he doesn't treat these platforms like a one-way street. People who send him messages are often surprised to receive personal replies. Even with the enormous responsibilities of his Vatican role, he still finds time to respond to individual concerns, often offering words of comfort, guidance, or simply a prayer. Cardinal Tagle's spiritual leadership isn't just about communication, it's also about action. He has long been an advocate for the poor, the excluded, and the forgotten. He believes deeply that spirituality is not meant to stay within the walls of the church, but must be lived out in the streets, in homes, and in policies. During his time as Archbishop of Manila, and even before that as Bishop of Imus, he launched initiatives that addressed poverty, homelessness, and hunger. He opened church buildings to serve as shelters, transformed unused land into community gardens, and supported feeding programs that treated guests with dignity. He often reminds his fellow clergy that the poor are not a category. They are people with names, families, and dreams. One of his well-known quotes is, "Poverty is not just a topic to be discussed, it is a face to be recognized." His emphasis on meeting people where they are is not just a slogan, it's a central principle of how he lives and leads. Whether he is sitting with refugees, dining with the homeless, or speaking at a global summit, his focus remains on listening and walking alongside those who suffer. His approach to leadership has earned him respect not just within the church, but among secular and interfaith communities as well. He has been a consistent presence in interreligious dialogue, often serving as a bridge between faiths. Muslim leaders in the Philippines have praised him for his respectful engagement, and Jewish leaders have recognized his efforts to heal old wounds and build new partnerships. His commitment to peace, justice, and mutual understanding is one of the reasons he has become such an important global figure. Tagle's voice has also been strong on issues like climate change and environmental justice. Inspired by Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si', he has spoken passionately about the need to care for creation. In the Philippines, a country often hit by typhoons and natural disasters, his leadership on environmental concerns has been especially relevant. He has encouraged parishes to reduce waste, conserve energy, and engage in reforestation efforts. But more than policies or projects, he speaks of the earth in spiritual terms, as a gift, a responsibility, and a sacred trust. Another defining aspect of Cardinal Tagle's spiritual leadership is his humility. Despite holding one of the most powerful positions in the Catholic Church as prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, he often reminds people that titles mean little without service. Those who have worked with him say he maintains an open-door policy, listens attentively in meetings, and is never too busy to greet someone in the hallway. In a world where power often comes with ego, Tagle's humility is both refreshing and inspiring. His personal testimony during the COVID-19 pandemic also highlighted his ability to lead through vulnerability. In 2020, he tested positive for the virus. Instead of remaining silent about his illness, he openly shared his experience, offering comfort to others facing the same fears. His recovery became a symbol of hope and resilience, especially in a time when many felt overwhelmed by uncertainty and grief. Tagle has never tried to present himself as perfect or above struggle. He is known to cry during Mass, particularly during homilies that touch on human suffering. His emotional openness has touched countless hearts. He once explained that crying in public doesn't show weakness, it shows truth. It means acknowledging the depth of human pain and joy, and refusing to harden your heart in the face of it. He has also spoken candidly about the Church's shortcomings, particularly in relation to wealth and inequality. During a major conference, he once said, "We cannot preach about poverty while living in luxury." That statement, though simple, challenged long-standing attitudes within church institutions. He continues to call for financial transparency and urges church leaders to model the values they preach. For many people, both inside and outside the church, Cardinal Tagle represents a new kind of spiritual leader. He is deeply grounded in Catholic tradition, yet he is not afraid to ask difficult questions or suggest new ways of doing things. He combines theological depth with emotional intelligence. He leads not by commanding, but by accompanying. And perhaps most importantly, he makes people feel seen. His influence extends far beyond the walls of any church. People tune in to hear him not just because of what he knows, but because of how he makes them feel. He reminds people that faith is not a set of rules to be memorized, but a relationship to be lived. He shows that you don't need to choose between tradition and compassion. You can hold both at once. In a time when spiritual leaders are often viewed with skepticism, Cardinal Tagle stands out as someone who builds trust. He does not rely on charisma or political savvy. He leads with empathy, patience, and an unwavering belief in the power of love. Whether he's in a Vatican meeting speaking to students or comforting a grieving family, the message remains the same. God is near, hope is real, and each person matters. His leadership continues to shape the global church, not just through his titles, but through his example. And as the Catholic Church faces new challenges in the 21st century, voices like Tagle's offer a path forward. One rooted in service, humility, and the unshakable belief that faith, at its core, is about love.